So let's finish up here. Client fraud can fall kind of into two different categories. You have healthcare fraud, tax evasion. Healthcare fraud, these are healthcare providers who might engage in fraud by having, from stealing from their patients. So whether it's like overbilling or billing for services that didn't happen, or completing surgeries that were not needed. It's just making the patient pay for things that weren't necessary. Tax evasion is whenever you have somebody who's not paying their taxes or not reporting correctly, so that they're evading some of those taxes. That means that then the government isn't getting the money that they were supposed to be getting, which in fact, can impact your schools, your roads, all of those things. So, corporate crime. Corporate crime are powerful institutions or their representatives who willingly violate the laws that restrain these institutions from doing social harm or require them to do social good. So, what does this mean? Whenever you have corporate crime, your business or an individual within that business is obviously violating the laws for profits for their corporation. So, what that means, one example that is probably the easiest to explain would be price fixing. What we have whenever we talk about price fixing, they will maximize their prices and reduce the cost of the competition. So they are going to make you pay a premium for theirs, and then either there's no competition, or they run out of the competition by price fixing. And whenever you have deceptive pricing, they might give you misleading information. Maybe they mischarge. They may switch out. They may not be held to their contracts. But deceptive pricing happens by kind of saying, here's what the price for this is, and then by deception changing it and overpricing or getting more money through deception. Lastly, false claims advertising. When you might see something on TV that says these claims are not researched by the FDA. So maybe it's this vitamin helps your hair grow 3 inches longer in 2 days, and but they're saying, the FDA hasn't signed off on this, and this isn't scientifically proven. But what it can be is, so you advertise that something happens, you're putting a product out there in its very best light, or it's like a weight loss product where one person took this and they lost 100 pounds. Well, everybody else that takes it may lose 5 pounds. So it's kind of false advertising to be like, you will lose 100 pounds on this medication. So watch your commercials, and you'll see these are, there might be a little disclaimer at the bottom, and that's so that they don't commit false claims advertising. So the last thing I'm going to talk about are green collar crimes, and I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it, but it does give me an example to bring up Joe Exotic. So again, if you have not watched The Tiger King, you must do so, because this really fits into what we're talking about this week. But going back to the very first slide here, green collar crimes are crimes that are committed for financial gain, but these crimes are violating the environment. So one of the things that we've seen is illegal logging. So in rainforest, or in locations where there might be endangered wildlife, there may be a law that says you're not able to log or cut down trees. It can damage your rainforest. It can lead to landslides. It can kill off some of your wildlife. It can impact the air, the oxygen levels that we breathe. So your textbook gives an example Illegal logging creates unsustainable economic devastation in the poorest countries. Vietnam, for example, has lost a third of its forest cover, while in nearby Cambodia, the harvest from illegal logging is at least 10 times the size of the legal harvest. So these people are going in and creating serious harm by logging where they're not supposed to, but they're doing it for a financial gain. And then the last thing I'll talk about will be illegal wildlife exports. This is where Joe Exotic comes in. One of the things that we were talking about, or that you, if you've watched this, is my husband and I were talking about this, that there are, more lions, tigers, big cats in captivity than out in the wild. And how is that? Well, it's probably because of wildlife exports. So selling wildlife illegally, it's violating the laws, especially if those animals are protected animals. And by doing so, you're putting animals in captivity, and then you will wind up with more animals in captivity than you actually do out in the wild. So, if you've seen it, I was quite surprised at how little it actually costs to get a tiger, but definitely not going to buy one. So. Okay, you can look through these. You're not going to be tested on these. If you want to, you're more than welcome to look at the Environmental Law Acts. But if this is something you're interested in, and if you're interested in environmental law, there are many classes out there that will focus on, these specifically, just not criminology. So how do we control it? Deterrence versus compliance. Whenever you have a compliance strategy, you attempt to control white collar crime by sanctions or civil penalties to control potential violators. You create a marketplace incentive to obey the law. By deterrence, if you're familiar, and hopefully you know what deterrence means by now, but you punish people, you punish individual offenders so that other would-be violators don't want to suffer the same consequences. So whether you encourage people to comply or you scare people to comply, there are a couple different strategies when we talk about white-collar economic crimes. Okay, I think that is the last slide I have. If not, let me know, because my slideshow won't go any further. But so please watch over this. Make note of any questions. If you are not familiar with Bernie Madoff, that is one assignment I'm going to give you for the week. I want you to read about him. I know some of my repeat students, my program students, you have talked about him and studied him. I'm fascinated with him, and I'm fascinated with what he was able to pull off for such a large amount of time. So look up Bernie Madoff. I don't know if I said Bernie Sanders earlier. If I said Bernie Sanders, please know that I'm losing it here at home. I'm talking about Bernie Madoff. So look up Bernie Madoff, and let's look at how much money. Be ready to tell me how much money did he embezzle. And then the last little assignment I'm going to give you is I want you to find one professional criminal. Back in the first slideshow for this chapter, we talked about professional versus occasional. I want you to find me one person that you believe would fall under the professional criminal definition. And we will meet on Teams later this week to talk about all of these. Thanks.